claims he can run this station by himself. So today, Neil's running our broadcast without a script. Good luck, Neil.
Nope.
Hi everybody, my name is Neil, and welcome to 235 KMKR Geiger Bot Radio. As always, we are broadcasting on AM frequencies, and we are so glad to have you listening in today, dear listener. Oftentimes, people will write to our station asking why in our August 8th, 1992 broadcast, I sounded a little drugged when I read the Billiards Best sponsorship read. The reason for this is actually quite simple. The scripts come to me in a pneumatic tube, and normally I practice them beforehand, but it came in a tube while I was reading, and so naturally I had to read it the first time through. I don't have any script for a sponsorship today, so I'm just gonna go through the ones I remember really quick. McMullen Industries Veteran 2, Muscle Car, something or other. You've tried all the rest, now try Billiards Best. The Cult of the 8 Ball has new openings for new members, and I guess that's a sponsorship we have today, according to my buddy Neil Paymon. Speaking of Neil Paymon, you people have no right to treat him the way you do, okay? Listen, I've heard half a dozen radio stations tell him to kick dirt because, he comes to them with his findings. I was the first person he ever came to with his findings, and, believe it or not, this has answers about the man behind the 1988 incident, okay? And I should know. I've met him. It's terrible. The way that the Paymon family is treated is terrible. I spent 6 months in high school living with them when my parents kicked me out. And they were the only people who were willing to take me in. I lived with Neil and Francis and Chim and Chime and Kurt and Catherine, and they were great folk. I'm a firm believer. They are not crazy, they are just cursed. I don't know what went wrong, where along the line, but that family is cursed. And they don't deserve the way you people treat them in the town of Porter. Yes, Porter, I am talking to you. If you live in the town of Porter, you are responsible for this. Neil's findings are incredibly important, and I remember when he first brought them to me. Alright? We went for a drive, he had the radio on, I asked him to turn it off, and he said that you can find all sorts of fascinating stuff from the radio. And I dealt with his radio obsession for years. It was no big deal. I had dealt with it for years because it was his thing, and it's a big part of how we met. When I was a kid, my parents would leave the radio on, and I would hear a voice come through. And that scared me. So I'd go to school in tears. I was scared of everything. And of course, when you're scared of everything and you're like 8, 9 years old, every kid wants to take advantage of that to just mess with you. Which, by the way, that's not cool. I really don't appreciate it when I'm scared of something, so someone around me takes advantage of that just to get a kick. But one day I was sitting there, I was crying. It was a terrible day. And this kid comes up to me while I'm crying and he goes, "Hey, why are you crying?" I go, "Well, my parents leave the radio on at night, and I hear voices and it scares me." And Neil told me, you don't need to be afraid. That's just how radios are. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he explained to me that when radio stations are down, they broadcast things to make sure they're not just broadcasting dead air. And this helps prevent radios from getting shut down if they don't broadcast for an extended period of time. Later I found out that it was a JFK speech they were broadcasting. But he put out his hand and he said, "I'm Neil." And I was like, "No way. You're never gonna believe this. I'm Neil too." So that was it. We were the Neils. And that's what we were. So, we're in his truck. And I ask him to turn the radio off, and he tells me a lot of valuable things can be learned from the radio. And naturally, I'm like, what are you talking about, Neil? You know I hate the radio. Turn the damn thing off. And Neil says, just listen. And he starts fiddling through this until he gets to 88.8 FM. And we sit there and we listen, and I hear like a beat in the background of whatever it is they were jabbering about. More ad reads. I hear 8, 8, 8. And I'm like, Neil, what is this? And Neil says, well, I have a working theory. I'm like, well, what's your working theory, Neil? And he says, do you notice anything kind of strange about the August 8th, 1988 incident? And I'm like, I don't notice anything strange about it. It was a terrorist attack, you know? That's all there is to it. It was a terrorist attack on the Church of the Other. It founded the cult of the 8 Ball. It's often associated with the number 8 because it's 08, 08, 88. You know, I don't notice anything particularly strange about it. And Neil, he looks at me and he says, why the number 8? And, of course, I'm like, I have no idea what you are talking about. Now, Neil's always been really big into this numerology stuff. And he's a pretty religious individual, grew up around other worship, but has dipped his toes into revelationism. He's quite scholarly on the matter. He explained to me that when the number 8 occurs, it's often representative of new orders or new creations. A born-again type of situation that affects everybody. And I started to wonder about this. But I'm afraid to say that neither of us could elaborate it any further than that. We just know that, listen, the August 8th, 1988 incident is major, and it means that there's something new coming. I don't care if it's been years. Given this 8 trend, it could be 8 years before we get answers. It could be 8 days from now. I don't know. But whatever it is, whenever it comes, and Neil Paimon starts talking about it, listen, okay? Listen.
I deeply apologize for everything Neil just said. Boy, am I gonna get hell from the censors for that one. Neil. There's just some things you don't talk about on the radio, and that was the big one. So I gotta say, my nerves are a little shot. Well, that concludes our subpar broadcast day.